Simon, I remember when the news broke last year. Well, I mean, the news broke as in a couple of the papers that you were going to be becoming
Mm,
Eddie Jones's new attack coach, but there'd been no official announcements yet. So it
mm.
was a surprise to all of us that happened. But tell us about that process for you and how you came to be into Eddie's thinking to become his attack coach of the England 15 side.
Yeah, I was quite fortunate that I was asked to help out for a few sessions in Treviso when the guys were preparing for the World Cup, and got a real sense of the environment and just the brilliance of the people more than anything. Because there are some brilliant players and some brilliant staff as well, and there was just such a wonderful environment in which was challenging. You're learning, it's elite, it's everything you expect from a world class team. And then, quite simply, after the guys came back from the World Cup, Eddie had a conversation with us and said, "You're really keen for me to look at this opportunity." So I had to go away and reflect. It would mean me stepping away from the Sevens program, which has been my life and soul for the past 7 years as a coach, and several years before that as a player. But the opportunity to go into a World Cup finalist team, to work with a brilliant set of players, a brilliant set of people, and New Zealand head coach in John Mitchell, a World Cup winning coach in Matt Proudfoot, Eddie, of course, who's fantastic. It was a brilliant opportunity for me to grow and learn, and mostly, hopefully, add a different perspective. So a real diversity of a coaching team that can try and bring together and take England to the next level. So there's a real diversity in our coaching team. It's a huge opportunity.
So from picking up, Sam, am I right in saying you didn't put a job application in then? Literally, you were asked to do something in Treviso. They liked the cut of your jib, and they just offered you the job point blank. Didn't go out to market.
No, coaching conversation. Yeah, I mean that's realistically. I've been involved with the RFU for 7 years. So I think people knew about me, and I'd had conversations previously with different coaches within the RFU and Eddie previously. So I know he was looking at me for a while in his mind. So that was a wonderful opportunity. Being honest, what I was probably a bit disappointed with was it kind of got announced whilst I was out in, I think it was the Cape Town Sevens at the time, and that was a really tough one for me because I hadn't had a chance to speak with my family about it. Well, I spoke with my wife, obviously, but not my kids. So they'd obviously grown up all about kind of the Sevens, and they loved their 15s as well. But so having to tell them that this was an opportunity through like this, a FaceTime type of thing, was a bit of a tough one. That hurt me quite a fair bit because it's one of the ones you wanted to have a conversation face to face and say, this is what's happening and this is what it is. But unfortunately, that was just the way it panned out in the end.
So opening round of the Six Nations, you're in your first game in anger as attack coach of England, and half time against France, things aren't going well. What's going through your mind at that point?
Yeah, it was an interesting one because you had a brilliant actually piece of possession from us. We actually, if you looked at the amount of entries we had into the 22, we really did have a lot of opportunities to actually get in there. What we didn't do was capitalise on those opportunities. So, and then you had a couple of opportunities for France, a bounce of ball here for a ball in the air that bounces and they go and score, a sneak around the corner and stuff. So there wasn't actually too much that we actually got specifically wrong, but how we then evolved and analysed that, I think, was a really interesting one for me in that first half time. So there's a very clear structure to the half-time processes where the senior players go in and speak with Eddie first, the backs come to myself, the forwards go with Matt Proudfoot, and then it's very clearly summarised into 3 key points with Eddie at the end. And those 3 key points were very, very clear. And you could actually see the progress we made in that second half as a result.
Can I just ask something about that half time? Because I listened to Eddie Jones's podcast with Conor O'Shea about half times. And so I totally understand. And I can picture the Twickenham change, although I know in this instance you were in Paris. So am I right in saying what happens is the senior players go with Eddie and the backs go with you? Does that not occasionally mean that you might come up with some ideas with the backs that are different to what the senior players have with Eddie? How does that work? Just do the timeline, do the chronology for me, so there's no mismatch.
Yeah, no, sure. So to clarify, straight away, the guys come into the change room, the senior players go with Eddie, the rest of the players get into their groups, but they just calm, they recover, there's a bit of hydration, massage or the like. Then once that very short conversation with Eddie happens to your players, they then go back to their units, and then the conversation happens, 3 clear key points. But we're very lucky. I mean, certainly in the back line, when you work with some brilliant people, experienced players, got a lot of caps under them, Owen, George, Manu, Johnny May. It's a very, very intelligent, experienced backline. They will generally come up with those points themselves. And then that gets brought back into a team collective conversation with Eddie. That's a real clarity for the whole group for the next half.
Right.
To go from being in charge of the Sevens team, running the women's and men's program with England Rugby and looking after Team GB as well, of course, every 4 years, to them being an attack coach under Eddie, what have you learnt that's different? You talked about the evolution of being a coach. What have you learnt under Eddie that's been different since you took that role?
Well, I mean, the first thing I had to do before I got on board with the team was to really understand how to be a good assistant coach. Because for 7 years or so, even before that, for the past 10 years, all I had been was either a director of rugby, head coach for London Scottish, or the head coach of the men's sevens program for England, or the head of the program overseeing the men's and women's. So all I'd been was effectively the leader. So I needed to really understand how to be a great assistant coach. So I actually went and spoke with Steve Holland, had a really good conversation with him, who's Gareth Southgate's assistant, and because he had some wonderful experiences working under a number of different sort of great managers, to really understand how he operated so he could help the team and support the head coach to be the best that they could be. So that was the first step for me. Then it was understanding, once I got into the program, the huge difference, and it's a really significant difference between a full-time England Sevens program where you get the players more than full-time. If the best way of me kind of describing it, it's like a full-fat version of full-time, because you're not just full-time training, be away in hotels. You've got so much time on your hands with each other to build those relationships, to understand how you want to play the game and develop people. So you go from that full-time program there to the camp-based model, where effectively the players come in from their clubs, they have their ways of operating with their clubs, and they come into England. You bring that together in a very, very short space of time, in a very intense, highly elite sort of environment. So a real shift in mindset there was something became very evident to us. And the key thing, if I was to summarise what the key lesson really was just being absolutely clear on the language you use. The language, so you simplify your points, so you maximise every moment you get. When time is so precious, you've got to be absolutely clear. And that's one of the biggest lessons I guess I learned during that first Six Nations campaign.
Because we know they're notoriously demanding of players, expects incredibly high standards, wants them to stretch themselves and find new places to go individually, emotionally, but also the way they're playing the game. Is he the same with his coaches? Is he as demanding of you lot in terms of what you can give that he, in terms of those expectations, he also puts on his players as well?
100%. 100%, because it's the whole environment you're creating that everyone is trying to find a way of doing something better. And I guess it's in terms of role modelling it as coaches or support staff. But ultimately, our job is to continually try and find. I think the language I heard on a recent podcast was around that discretionary performance level. So we know the players can hit this level here. How do we get that discretionary bit on the top there? What are we going to do that's going to add that extra kind of value? So everything is about us as a coaching team, as coaches, is to try and find ways of adding that extra bit. So it's everything we kind of do, from how we hold meetings to how we challenge each other as coaches in the way of seeing the game, picking holes in each other's game plans, if you like, to the succinctness of our message, to a units group, to an individual player relationship. It's everything. It covers everything we try to do.
I'm going to just pick up on the playing side a little bit in terms of the realms of responsibility. So, having been able to watch the occasional England session the past 4 or 5 years under Eddie. You've come in now. I know Eddie's always liked to get involved with the back sessions, which I know would be a large section of the attack, but not all of the attack. So what's your realms of responsibility within sort of 9 to 15? Are you coming up with the backs moves? Are you toying with skills? Are you toying with skills under pressure, kicking game? Just, again, tell me your areas of power.
Well, and it's another learn on for myself, effectively, is with the time you don't have an awful lot of time to work on the technical skills with the team, with the individual players. Our time is very much more around actually the plays, I guess, the behaviours, what it takes to be successful for a test match. I look after the outside backs, so that's the kind of group that I'm assigned to making my closest relationships with. So your Johnny Mays, your Elliot Dailies, your Manu Tuilagis, and understanding how we can really evolve our outside backs defence and attack. But I also cover off the backs as a whole and the team attack. And it's very much a shared work with John Mitchell in that respect as well, because John Mitchell, of course, is a defence coach. So we will often do phase attack against phase defence and phase defence and try and beat each other to evolve kind of how the players are playing. But with all of this, Eddie is the head coach, and he is the person that sets the overall framework as to how you need to play the game. And that's through discussions with the coaches, but he is the person that sets that guidance for us. So he's very much involved in everything, but very strong lead, I guess, in my particular around the backs and that phase attack side of things.